I just finished Dragon Age the Veilguard, and I wanted to showcase my build, the one that I used to beat the game, because I genuinely think after playing this game for multiple different characters and multiple different builds, I think this is one of the most OP builds in the game, especially if you're playing a mage. Not only are you invincible, but you're pretty much going to one-shot everything on sight. But before I get into it, thank you guys so much for 700 subscribers. I'm hoping to hit 1K by the end of the month. So if you guys love gaming news, love gaming reviews, and even like these build guides for different RPGs, please subscribe to me. It helps me out a lot. Thank you so much. Now let's get into the video. So this build is specifically for a Deathcaller specialization, as overall mages are super good in this game comparatively to the other classes in my opinion, but the Deathcaller specialization specifically for this build makes it completely OP, and you can pretty much just crush anything and be kind of invincible at the exact same time. Now, not everything on here, to preface, is perfect. You can definitely choose some different options depending on what gear that you have at any given time, but I wanted to break this down for you guys so you guys could potentially try this build in your playthrough, whether you're running on an easy mode or all the way up to nightmare. I've tried it on all, and it works extremely well on all of them, and is still definitely my favorite and probably the strongest build that I have in the game so far. So to start off, you want to make sure you have a couple things on this character. As much necrotic and necrosis damage, which is the stack of necrotic on this character, as possible. You also want to make sure you have as many things that can keep you at low health and raise your low health threshold as possible. You also want to make sure you have your resistances as high as possible as well, and I'll get to why in a second. So starting off with the skills, and then I'll get to some of the gear that you're going to need and why you're going to need some of that gear to make this as strong as possible, and then we'll get to the actual companions in the gameplay of it, and I'll show you guys kind of how it works. So to start off, not all of this is super important, so you can kind of just go what you want, but I think it is always pretty good to get this Frost Nova here, because you'll do more damage with this right here, which allows your abilities, if you're switching between necrotic and cold, to do more damage. So when you start off using your freeze, your next big hit ability, which is going to be this corrupted ground ability right here, is going to do more damage. You can also get some of these that increase the area of effect, where it can do more damage to more people within a specific area because it's doing a lot more damage in a larger area. Same with this one is really good because the more enemies you hit, the more damage you do, as well as some of these over here, which you can increase the duration, but also again increase how big the range is of your corrupted ground and your freeze AoE. You can get it up to 100% bonus, which is super important. All of these other bonuses around here are really good because they'll do some affliction damage, as you can see, more affliction damage, affliction duration. All of these are good as well, especially if you're fighting bosses, but this one's really important, which is your necrotic stacks or your necrosis stacks from your corrupted ground. Super important. And then the big ones obviously is the resistance, which I'll get to in a second. And then also advantage damage is really good as well, because you're going to have advantages on them from the different abilities and companions that you use. And then once you actually get to your Deathcaller tree at level 20, you do want to fill this out, but it's better to go this path down here first. And the reason why is because of this. You get damage bonus relative to the amount of health you and your target have lost, which is extremely important, and one of the reasons you want to kind of stay on low health with this build. This build's also going to allow you to use actions, like when you're using your ranged ability and you press triangle. This is actually going to decrease your health instead of your mana, which number one is just really good for getting your health down, but before you get some specific items that use abilities from health, this is really good because it'll allow you to have a reliable way, not just getting hit by enemies, but doing damage while also losing your health and being able to do more damage after that. And then why I say you're invincible is pretty much because of this ability right here, especially when you get the item where you can use abilities off of your health. This one's going to heal you as well. So if you get a lot of healing up, which is also in this tree, or like siphon, heal effects, heal leech effects, and extra health, you want to get a lot of health on this build so you can have a lot even when you have low health. This is the ability that's going to keep you up, but also use health to use it. And then if you ever get too low, you can use this ability. You don't even have to use a potion or anything like that. Let me get into the actual gear, because this is going to be really important as well. Now, I think the best arcane orb is the Fade Light. It's going to do damage versus health, so that's pretty self-explanatory, but it's also going to give you more healing if you need. 250 health on perfect defense, it's okay. And then 25% light attack damage, you have no potions, that's okay. You don't have to use this one. There's also another really good one here, which is the Veil Song, that'll give you stagger, but there's anything crazy for your main weapon that you're going to need to use. But the other big thing here is you're just going to be using probably the Thorn of Misfortune, but there's also some better ones too. I genuinely think anyone that has like arcane bombs, like I think this one's probably better. The only issue with this one is I don't have this one gold, especially on this save state, which I had to go back to. So as of right now, I am using this one, and I'll get to the enchantments after I go through the gear, but this is going to be the biggest part of this entire build, or one of the two biggest things in this build, aside from your skills. So this is the bargain. This is going to give you extra health, like I mentioned. It's going to reduce your maximum mana, which does not matter because you're now going to use abilities using your health instead of your mana at 250% of the rate. So if something does 50 mana, it'll do 5 times that amount of your health. That's why you want to get a lot of health, so you can stay alive, but also manage how low you get. And then the helmet. Honestly, this is not the best helmet with this build. I think the best helmet is probably the Death Mask if you can get this thing gold. The Death Mask is ridiculous if you can get this thing gold, because applying 3 unique afflictions is very easy, especially when you can get fire damage with your companions and the different detonations that you do, but also you're going to be putting a lot of affliction on it, so you want a lot of affliction damage on here for your necrosis and for the damage off of that. And then also you're going to have to get Mourn Watch all the way up to the max to get this staff right here. So if you get Mourn Watch all the way up to the max, this is going to immediately do a ton more damage, because if you think about it, that's like 300, 400, depending on what your Mourn Watch faction is, off the rip as extra damage relative to your allied strength, which is really, really good. So use that one if you can. Armor-wise, I think this is by far the best piece of armor because of all the necrotic resistance and damage it gives you, which I'll get to why resistance is important here in a second. You want to go this belt because it gives you that passive necrotic damage bonus, especially if you can get this thing gold and get that extra stack on use. Oh my god, that is huge. That is huge. The burden. Now this is also, aside from this staff, this is going to be the most important item in your build, and you're going to get this by fighting one of the gate bosses. I forget the exact one, but you fight one of the gate bosses, you go back to the crossroads, you fight the big boss, and then you get a unique item, and this is that unique item right here. So that one's, the staff is from the faction, this is from the big gate bosses that you fight in the crossroads. This one's important because your low health triggers earlier, which is really good to get all the extra damage on how low health you can get. 20% damage extra while you're at low health, and your health can't go above 70, so it's a lot easier to get there. That is so big. You're also automatically doing damage because you already have taken technically 30% of your overall health in a fight, which goes really well with the passive skill that you choose. Now, if you go down here to your rings, these are the 2 rings. One's going to do the necrotic damage and resistance, which again, I'll get to that in a second, but resistance is very big with this build. You're also going to do ability damage versus health, and then over here, you're going to have that necrosis duration, another maximum stack if you can get this thing gold. So that's going to be up to like borderline 6 or 7 stacks already if you can get that thing gold. I'm only rocking like 4 or 5 stacks right now. And then the last thing here, when you go to your runes, use the Up-End Rune. This is the best rune in the fucking game, in my opinion. You can immediately do insane amount of damage. So you get plus 5% to all your resistances, and then for 10 seconds, you make all of your resistances offensive bonuses. So we've already went through all the resistance that I have. Now, think about how much more damage. That's automatically 70% more damage when you hit this, 45% more cold damage when you hit this. It's ridiculous how much more damage you're doing, plus your 205% ability damage and your necrosis stacks and your necrotic damage and your necrosis damage. All of that is going to just completely compound on each other and be multiplicative off of each other to do insane damage, which I will show you. Now to your companions, the biggest ones that you want to use are Davrin and Lucanus, because Lucanus, he is going to apply Sunder. Davrin, he is going to be able to detonate Weakened. Now, if you go to your character and the abilities that we're using, as you can see, you can apply Weakened and detonate Sunder. So they work really well. You can use other ones as well, but they work super well, especially with Lucanus, because Lucanus has a lot of things in his skill tree that can increase like different necrotic damage and stuff. I know this ability specifically does, but overall, he's extremely good. Lucanus's abilities deal 25% more to enemies suffering from one affliction if you get his complete quest done. You also get all that increased detonation damage and critical damage. Same with Davrin. He's a little bit worse, but he's a tank, so he can get in there, and he can also take enemies off you if you really need to and you really get too low. So he's actually pretty good for that as well, and I like how he can, obviously, to also detonate weakened, which is really huge, and deal a lot of stagger, which is also important when you're fighting bosses. But I just like him, honestly, as a character. But you can pretty much use some other characters that have those same type of applies and detonates on them. Now go to the workshop, you're going to go to the caretaker, obviously get all your gear upgraded to the max. But if you go to your enchants, so these are the most important ones. Arcane Bomb trigger is important. That one's always going to be really good, specifically because if you're going up and attacking someone and wanting the Arcane Bomb to trigger after you do your big burst with your abilities, you're going to want more damage on that. Area ability damage is because your main hit that you're going to be using, as well as your freeze, scales off of that. Necrotic resistance, self-explanatory. Now, if you go to the Epic Light Armor, or you go to the Cold Resistance as well, get your resistances up. That's for your freeze damage. Damage at low health, obviously that's like the most important thing for this build. You want that to trigger. Also this one, 40 necrotic damage, huge. Necrosis damage, huge. Duration ability damage is also huge because your main area ability is also a duration ability. So both of those are going to scale off of the damage of that ability. Now for Dabbling, you're going to want affliction damage, necrotic damage, obviously, to raise that. And then you're also going to want for Lucanus, more stacks of necrotic, ability damage. All of that's going to be extremely good. You can also do detonation damage, because detonations are also going to be very important with these characters as well to get the highest amount of burst potential as possible. To showcase this build, you want to get all the enemies in pretty much right next to each other. You're going to pop your resistance, and then you're going to use your freeze, then use your corrupted ground, then you're going to use Davrin's ability with that, and you can pretty much just kill everybody off rip just after the detonation goes off. It's pretty easy. They die in like 2 seconds, but you also have your other detonation, which you could use kind of on top of that. And that's what is going to give you health and pretty much make you invincible. As you can see, my abilities are already recharging because I'm not using mana to use them. I'm using health to use them. To ever get more health, all you do is use this. You can use this with the Sunder as well. And then, I mean, it's pretty much dead in seconds. That's really good to use against bosses as well. It's super easy to pretty much kill anything that they throw at you. Now we have a little bit of a boss here, so we can see this against bosses and how much damage it does. Let me just wait a second to get my abilities back. You can also combo all of this stuff with your staff, which is really good. So, I mean, let's try to get them all over here as quick as possible. But they're kind of all my companions, so let's just do this. Use the abilities, like so. And the boss is pretty much already dead. And you have an insane amount of overtime damage as well. So the overtime damage is going to do a lot. And now you can see my abilities are already back up. So just use it again. Just kill everything. And move on. Kill everything and move on. That's pretty much the whole build. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Comment down below if you guys like this build, if you like this guide, give me feedback on this guide. And then also, if you guys have a build that you have been using that you think is really good and OP, I would love to try it out. I'm working on a Reaper build right now for the Warrior, so it's probably going to use some of these same items, so we'll see how that goes. I hope it's really good doing it on Nightmare, so I'm excited for that. Like the video if you like the video, and subscribe for more content like this. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace!